Let's do some takeaways from last night's Spurs loss to the Heat. Take a look at the Spurs at the trade deadline and should they even make a move.
You are Locked On Spurs, your daily San Antonio Spurs podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, this is Hot Rod.
And I'm RC from the Cybertron Experience.
And you're listening to Locked On Spurs with Jeff Garcia.
Welcome back to Locked On Spurs, the Locked On NBA Network. I'm your host, Jeff Garcia, Spurs writer for Kansas 5 San Antonio. Glad everybody's having a great day. Hope you all are. And we'll get you through it regardless right here on Locked On Spurs. You guys are the everydayers. We thank you for making Locked On Spurs your first listen each and every single day. Kansas 5 Plus app, YouTube, pick a platform. We are there. This episode is brought to you by PrizePicks, the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Go to PrizePicks.com/LockedOnNBA. Use code all lowercase LockedOnNBA for a first deposit match up to $100. Hey, what are we talking about today? Well, we're going to be looking at last night's game, just real briefly. Some takeaways from the Spurs loss, no shocker. And then bringing our guest, Hector Ledesma. We're going to be discussing the Spurs at the trade deadline. Yeah, that's today. Basically evaluating who, the Spurs could dangle, if they're going to make a move, how's this rebuild going on, and so much more. Just hang on tight. That'll be coming up next. But about last night, your Spurs lost to the Miami Heat, 116-104. Yeah, Spurs were hanging in there tough. They were. But we're going to get to those three takeaways in a few seconds. But yeah, they dropped to 10-41, 0-1 to start the rodeo road trip. They play again tonight versus the Magic, so it doesn't get any easier. So hopefully the Spurs can rebound from the loss. And speaking of the loss, go ahead and give those takeaways. Let's start off in the fourth quarter. Takeaway number one, they could not broken record here. They could not play a complete 48 minutes. They could not play a complete 4 periods of basketball. They were hanging in there. They were down by 1 at the third. They were down by 1 at the half. They were really bringing that energy against the Miami Heat in their gym, no less. And then the fourth quarter came about, and boy, did the wheels come off so fast. Miami outscores the Spurs 38-27 in the fourth period, and then it came down to shooting in that final frame. Spurs cannot buy a bucket in that fourth quarter. 9 for 23 from the field, 39%. While the Miami Heat went 12 for 19, 63% from the field. They just outshot the Spurs. And that's really what doomed them. It was that fourth period. And that's the first takeaway is, again, fourth period, not playing complete 48 minutes. They just got dusted in that fourth quarter, and that was all she wrote. Takeaway number two, they had no answer for Jimmy Butler, who finished with a triple-double. He really amped up his game. He shouldered the Heat to the win. He got a little, testy with the refs. He thought he could have won. He mouthed off to the refs. He just came alive. Again, he finished with a triple-double on the night. He finished with 17 points, 11 rebounds, and 11 assists. Yeah, he was a big problem for the Spurs, just doing it all for Miami. Now, the Heat, they had not just Butler having one, but they had 5 players in double figures. Bam Adebayo with 20 points. Tyler Hero with 24. Terry Rozier with 13. Jaime Jaquez with 10. So, yeah, but pretty much for Miami, it was Jimmy Butler being just a pest for the Spurs throughout the entire game. And takeaway number 3 is just they looked out of sorts. They looked like they lacked energy, lacked focus in that fourth period. They looked like a young team. You would think with the 3 days off they had before the road trip start, they would come out with a lot of energy, at least for 48 minutes, and they didn't. Victor, 27 minutes, 18 points, 13 rebounds, 7 for 13 shooting, 3 of 5 from the 3 line. He had himself an okay game. Then you're looking at Devin Vassell with 19 points, Trey Jones with 19 points, but there really wasn't that much else. It's like they ran out of gas in that fourth period. They just came apart. And you don't make shots in that fourth quarter in a tight game. You don't have somebody who can just take over the game. Well, the Spurs do, Wemby, but he just didn't rise to the occasion. And that just spells doom for the Spurs. And to highlight how much the Spurs, at least the starting 5, didn't have any energy. The Heat starting 5, 83 points. The Spurs starting five, 68 points. It was actually the Spurs bench that kept things a little interesting late in the fourth period. They came off and actually outscored the Heat bench 36-33. So that starting five just looked like they were just all out of sorts. After the game, Victor Wembanyama said that it was a shooting check. He also tipped his cap to Miami for being a veteran team, and he said about turnovers and whatnot, and they're just going to shoot. But I mean, my goodness, that's pretty much takeaway number 3 right there. Just lack of energy for the game. Now look, if I had to add a 3B to this, just to leave with some sort of positive note here. The Spurs were distributing the ball amongst each other, recorded 30 assists on 41 made field goals. So that's pretty good. It's their 26th game this season with at least 30 assists, second most in the league this season. And the Spurs actually have won 9 of the last 10 games this season when recording 30 assists. So it was tracking well. The Spurs sharing the ball, staying in tight against Miami, making shots. But that fourth period, they just really came apart. But that is your quick Spurs Heat takeaways. They play tonight versus the Magic, and we'll see what happens. Coming up next, we have Hector Ledesma. We're going to be discussing the Spurs at the trade deadline today, and just kind of seeing what the Spurs might be able to do. What can they do? Should they do anything? That's next, right here on Locked On Spurs. Hey, I want to talk to you about Nissan. Are you the kind of driver that likes to push things a little further? Ever wonder what adventure could be around the next corner? Our friends at Nissan have a lineup of SUVs with the capabilities to take your adventure to the next level. The 2024 Nissan Rogue is perfect for city drives, great escapes. They have the class exclusive Google built in. You're always updating your assistant to call on for almost anything. Look, gone are the days of connecting your phone. Google Assistant, Google Maps, Google Play Store are built right into the Nissan Rogue, into the 12.3-inch HD touchscreen information system. So the 2024 Rogue is a perfect mid-size crossover for your next adventure. Now, Nissan's incredible lineup also includes the 2024 Nissan Pathfinder. Has room up to 8 and expansive cargo capacity, advanced available 4x4 capacity with 284 horsepower and up to 6,000 pounds of towing. When adventure calls, the Pathfinder is there to answer. Look, go do it, man. Take the Nissan Rogue, Nissan Pathfinder, or Nissan Armada and go find your next adventure. Shop NissanUSA.com. And we're back right here on Locked On Spurs, joined by Hector Ledesma of Clutch Points. He is their Spurs beat writer. Y'all know him. He's a familiar face around these parts. Hector, how you doing?
Good, Jeff. How are you, my man?
Hey, it's trade deadline day, huh?
It is.
Can't be more excited, huh?
Yeah. Exciting time, especially as we wait to see what the Spurs might not do, right?
Right. This is going to be pretty much all Spurs fans today. Like, okay, we stayed up for nothing, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, I would have put it past the Spurs to do something. I mean, Brian Ryan has shown that he's willing to make deals. He's not a trader Bob levels, but way back in the day, Bob Bass. But he has made moves. We saw DeJounte to Atlanta, Boston, and Derek White. We saw all that. But I get what he was trying to do at that time, trying to get this team race to the bottom so they could build back up. But now they're already building back up. Do you think they're still in that mindset of still trying to get assets with the Spurs here at the trade deadline?
That's a great question. Yeah. Yes and no. And I don't mean to waver and waffle, but here's where the yes and no aspect comes in. I don't think, Jeff, and if they're being honest with themselves, I think they'd say this out loud. Mm-hmm. I don't think they thought they'd be as bad halfway into Wemby's rookie season as they are.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Frankly, bluntly, I think they expected more out of some of the guys on their roster. Mm. Does that mean that those guys are going to stay what they are for the rest of their careers? No. But right now, they don't have a clear sense of, well, are these the building blocks that we want to put around Wemby that we thought? Like, almost out of making it simpler, the answer to that question is yes. Like, yes, I think if you get Wemby another star or a fantastic point guard, I think you can be good with guys like Vassell and Sohan around. But I think what they're not sure about right now is Vassell good enough to be like 2 years from now? Is Vassell good enough to be your second best player on a team that's contending for a deep run into the playoffs? Like, I think best case scenario at this point of the season, at this much into Wemby's rookie year, I think they would have hoped that their answer would have been yes. Wemby, Sohan, Vassell, those are our cornerstones. We don't need to do much because we've already got Wemby. It's just building around him. I think as opposed to that, I think they're still in a spot where they're like, do we need like that second guy and that third guy who's going to be the best, the second, third best player on a contender? And is that type of guy available? If not right now, then in the summer, can we go chase it? And maybe because of that, the assets aren't as coveted and aren't as prized as they were leading into this year.
You mentioned Keldon. He's been kind of the main target for all these trade rumors regarding San Antonio. Even Vegas online bettors, the Bet Online, have Keldon landing with the Pistons, ahead of the trade deadline. So and I look at the numbers and we talk about building blocks. If we're looking from Wemby's point of view, well, he definitely loves playing with Keldon and Vassell. Excuse me, I should say with Vassell the most. Excuse me, I didn't mean to say Keldon. I meant to say Sohan. Keldon's not in that mix. If you're looking at the passing, Wemby passes to Devin the most, and vice versa. And then you look at Wemby, second player he passes the most to is Sohan. Keldon is a distant 12. So far, 12 passes from Wemby to Keldon. You have 25 from Wemby to Vassell. So if it's Wemby's team and they're building around him, I think Vassell might be safe, which leaves guys like Keldon and Sohan and everybody else perhaps on the trading block. Maybe not this time around, but maybe in the future, like in the offseason, Hector.
I think right now, whether you agree with it or not, I think right now the Spurs feel their second best player is Vassell, their third best player is Sohan, and then after those guys, it's Jeremy. I'm sorry, Keldon. I think that's their hierarchy of teams, and I think that's pretty clear this point into the season. What they don't know though is how good is Vassell going to be as a second best player 2 years from now. And so the question then remains is, well, if you're going to move Vassell, what are you comfortable giving up for him? And what would somebody else give up to get a Devin Vassell? Because if those things don't match, well, then you ride out with Vassell and Sohan, and even a guy like Keldon, who, as you mentioned, is kind of on the trading. By the way, quick tangent. The irony there is Keldon's probably been their most consistent guy outside of Wemby. For better or for worse. Whatever you think of Keldon, and that doesn't mean he doesn't have off nights every once in a while, but in context to this group, he's probably been their second most consistent player. Him and Trey. Trey's been pretty consistent too when he's gotten the opportunity. But back to the general conversation is, if they can't get what they want or what they think is fair for a Devin or a Sohan or a Keldon, then they're gonna stay pat. In terms of the moves they're gonna make. So the other guys, the more tradable guys, McDermott, Jetty, Devontae Graham, those are easier to discuss because they don't come with the complication of, well, is this guy potentially still a future building block? Like, the jury's still out on whether he's going to be an all-star caliber type player. Not an all-star, but maybe right underneath that, I guess is the way I should phrase it. Right. The jury's still out on that. If you're leaning toward no, okay, but that's still a pretty good, solid player. That's still kind of, to give an example of a guy the Spurs have traded away, that's a DeJounte Murray type player. That's a Derek White type player. Guys who might make an all-star game once or here and there throughout their career. Or guys who are in the conversation but don't quite really make it. Those are still really good players. Vassell's more than likely going to be that. Do you want to give that up this early in your career? And if so, if you're willing to take that chance because of what he could still be, what's the appropriate return? And so it gets complicated.
Yeah, and you're talking about earlier about players maybe not living up to what expectations may have been heading into the new season. We were talking about Devin Vassell. I mean, you look at his numbers from last year to this year, not that much of a difference. If you want to be technical about it, sure, there's been improvement. As of right now, of this recording, 18.7 points per game. Last year, 18.5. Rebounds, this year, 3.6. Last year, 3.9. Assists, 3.5 this year, 3.6 last year. You see where we're going with this. If anything, he make his significant development has been in the field goal percentage. He bumped it up 6 percentage points, 46%. Last year, 43. But he's kind of the same player. Now, is that a byproduct of Wemby coming here? You know, obviously the touches are going to go to him, not to Devin. Well, they'll tell that to Devin when the game's on the line and he'll take the final shot. But, you know, you look at the contract, the financials of it. Keldon, all these guys, they have easily flippable contracts. You look at Keldon's, his declines throughout this current contract before it expires. Very reminiscent of a DeJounte Murray, very reminiscent of Derek White. You know, that's a contract that other teams would want to have.
Right.
So I look at them and you look at where they are right now in their season, Hector. I mean, the season's a wash. It's over. I mean, do you really want to fake up the roster that much? I mean, would they really want to do that now, or should they wait for that in the offseason?
I think you wait for it in the offseason. I don't think you trade unless somebody's silly enough to give you what the Hawks gave for DeJounte.
Yeah.
Unless you have that kind of offer in front of you, I don't think it's, you know, like, for example, straight up, let's go through the scenario, right? Just like boil it down. Forget mixes and matches, forget capital and the way trades are everything is currency in terms of the way trades are looked at these days. And I asked this to the common fan who's just watching or listening to this, would you trade Devin for just a generic first round pick? And I say generic and I say a generic first round pick because, like, the Pistons aren't giving you next year's first pick for Devin Vassell.
They're not.
You know, the worst teams in the NBA aren't giving you their first pick of this coming draft for Devin Vassell. So would you take, for example, Milwaukee's first round pick, Philadelphia's first round pick for Devin? Some people might say, yes, take it. Devin's not helping you. 10 games. Okay, that's fair. But play that out. Don't you think that Devin is going to end up being better than, like, the 27th player or the 28th player picked in this coming draft? So so that's where it kind of gets dicey because of how young Devin and Jeremy and Keldon, how young they are, is therein lies the crux, right? Like, yes, they haven't taken the leap that maybe the Spurs themselves hoped they would take by this point of the season. And to something you said earlier, Jeff, let's be fair to Devin. He's not any worse than he was last year.
He's not worse, right? Yeah.
But I think the Spurs were hoping that he takes, and I'm going to throw the name out there just because they're tied, right? They're linked. But I think they were hoping that he would not be maybe not the exact same player, maybe not the exact same impact, but there would be a Halliburton type leap. A leap there, you know.
Yeah, that's a big leap. Yeah.
Well, but if you look at Devin's first couple of years, there's been a nice progression, and you bring up the Wemby factor, right? Like, is Wemby the reason that he's not scoring 25 points per game?
Probably. Probably.
Maybe. Yeah. But if he's scoring 25 points per game on a team without Wemby, they're a very empty 25 points, right? Like, best case scenario is you want 20 on a good team, on a contender, and we're the Spurs themselves are trying to figure out if. And there's some patience in there too, although now this is year 4 for Devin, is when is that going to happen, if it's going to happen? You know, and so because you're still left with all these questions, it's awfully hard to pull the trigger right now on a guy like Devin or Jeremy, and you can have a whole other conversation about Jeremy or Keldon. Even Keldon, he's the longest tenured Spurs. He's only in his 5th year. The guy's still 24 years old, or 25. He might be 25. He's the older statesman of, like, the core at the age of 25. You know, so that's what you get caught up when you talk about dealing these guys, is what do you get in return? And honestly, are you going to get something better when, and then there's the whole Wemby aspect to it too, right? Which I think we're going to get into throughout the rest of the show.
Yeah, absolutely. And let's be very clear. Hector and I, we're recording this before any major or any Spurs deal has been made ahead of the trade deadline. So if something does happen during this recording, obviously, recorded before that. So just keep that in mind moving forward. But yeah, I mean, that gives us a great chance to take a quick break. When we get back, we're going to ask, should the Spurs even make a move at all, period, at all? Do you want to shake the roster? We kind of said no. But if there is a move to make, what would it be? What would it look like? What would we like to see go down? That's coming up next right here on Locked On Spurs with Hector Ledesma. Make sure to follow him on X at Hector Ledesma TV. He is the Spurs writer for Clutch Points. We're going to be discussing that and more in just a few seconds. Hey everybody, I want to talk to you about PrizePicks. PrizePicks is America's #1 fantasy sports app with over 3 million members. They are the easiest, most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports, and this is you against the numbers. That's it. You pick more than or less than on 2 to 6 player stat projections, and hopefully you can start watching those winnings roll in. They have it all. I mean, seriously, they got it all at PrizePicks. Look, as they would say, it's demon time on PrizePicks. You can now win up to 100 times your money with as little as 4 correct picks. You could turn $10 into $1,000. Yeah, that should be a big reason why you go get that app right now. And PrizePicks is really simple to play. You can make picks and submit them in just less than 60 seconds. And they offer Apple Pay for quick, easy deposits, discounts on selected player projects up to 25% to provide even more value. They usually do that on promotion days like Taco Tuesday. They have it all. Go get that PrizePicks app right now. Hey, look, I have it. You should have it too. NBA season in full swing. You got one more game left in the NFL season, so better hurry up and go get that PrizePicks app right now. So go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNBA. Use code LockedOnNBA for a first deposit match up to $100. prizepicks.com/LockedOnNBA. The code is LockedOnNBA. Again, first deposit match up to $100. PrizePicks. Pick more, pick less. It's that easy. Hey, San Antonio, you stay up late catching the end of the Spurs game and needed yourself of a pick-me-up? Well, look no further than Mudslingers Drive-Thru Coffee. Mudslingers is locally owned independent coffee shop, and they're proud to make delicious coffee for our community. They do it fast, they do it friendly, so you can get on with your day. Whether you're in the mood for a latte, cold brew, Red Bull infused lightning bolt, they got it all. They have drinks for every single taste in San Antonio. They also have a wide selection of dairy alternatives, low-calorie options, even caffeine-free drinks for those who just want to take it easy. You want to follow them on social media. I'm telling you, go do it right now. Follow them at Muslinger SATX. That's on Threads, X, Facebook, TikTok. The list goes on and on. Very interactive. They have a wide selection of drinks for you to choose from at Muslinger's Drive-Thru Coffee. Friendly staff, mini donuts, the OG, and they have it all. You should be going to Muslinger's every single day, San Antonio. Swing by Muslinger's Drive-Thru Coffee for a tasty and convenient caffeine fix. Located at 2404 Thousand Oaks Drive near 281 to 1604. Open every single day from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. Once again, 2404 Thousand Oaks Drive near 281 to 1604. Open every day, 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. Go there right now. Why? Because life is too short for bland coffee.
This is Emily Swallow, and you are listening to Locked On Spurs with Jeff Garcia.
And we're now back right here on Locked On Spurs, joined by the Hulk himself. Oh, that's not the Hulk. I thought that was a Hulk. That's Hector Ledesma. Hector Ledesma on X, Hector Ledesma TV, Clutch Points Spurs writer. Look, he may not be the Hulk, but I heard a rumor that you actually took down the Hulk while playing one-on-one with Wemby, and you beat Wemby as well. That's pretty impressive.
You know what's funny is I think, were you there the day we got into a conversation right before a Spurs practice about if you played one-on-one, could you even get a shot off against me?
Yeah, I think I was there. I mean, I think I heard that conversation. Yeah,
like could one of your shots hit the rim? Like, no. Ooh. I don't think any one of my shots would hit the rim.
No, I mean, I had to chuck it maybe from half court. Maybe that's the best way, and hopefully it hits the rim. Yeah, but going up in the paint, with his ability. I mean, you seen those highlights where his back is to the person who's penetrating to the rim, but he just gets a glimpse and his length can just reach like this and disrupt it or block it. I mean, it's ridiculous.
Yeah, it should be humanly impossible to do what he's doing, but
exactly. Hey, athleticism. Yeah, exactly. But I'm glad we're talking about Wemby because, we kind of answered this question. This will be the final segment here. Should they make a move? But, I guess perhaps the big overarching question should be, should they make a move with Wemby's future in San Antonio in mind? I think that might be the direction the Spurs go, whether at the trade deadline today or in the offseason.
Yes, without a doubt.
Yeah.
Now, but then again, then the kid thing becomes like, what's a smart move? Because look, remember the Chris Paul rumors back in the summer?
I remember that. Yep.
Okay. The consensus was, and this is where the Spurs fell. This is the side the Spurs fell on, is don't mortgage your future. Don't give up a lot of assets for an aging point guard, right? A veteran point guard. True. In the moment, though, how much better off would Wemby be with a Chris Paul type guy, having him as a teammate through the first half of his rookie season? And I'm not just talking numbers. Yeah. I'm talking the growth of your game, knowledge of how to play, the expectation of how you should play when you're paired with a quality distributor.
Right.
And Wemby hasn't experienced any of that yet. Now, I don't mean to kind of waffle here and say that means the Spurs should have traded for Chris Paul, but I think given what the asking price might have been, right? But I think the question always is in the back of your mind is what is best for him in terms of building around him? Because while he is going to be absolutely spectacular and bordering on unstoppable in a couple of years, he's not going to be there next year. He might not be there when I say there at that level.
Right,
he might not be at that level in 2 years yet. He might not be. He's still got to develop. What's crazy about this, Jeff, is he's doing what he's doing without any semblance of a go-to.
Yeah.
Like he's basically just out there playing pickup for the most part. What he's comfortable doing, he does. Now, yes, it's coming within more of a system and it's a little bit more structured now than it was at the beginning of the season, but he doesn't have a move that he goes to when he really needs a bucket. And I think that's part of the reason why the Spurs have struggled down the stretch in terms of why didn't Wemby get touches? Yes, but some of that's on them. And the whole Vassell not seeing him thing against New Orleans is a totally different thing. But also, if we're being honest with ourselves, there were a couple of times down the stretch of that New Orleans games where Wemby got the ball. He did have his hands on the ball in those couple of those possessions, and he passed it back out because he wasn't comfortable getting to a spot or hadn't gotten to a spot by the time he got the ball where he felt like he could do something and make something happen. Yeah. So as he becomes that, what do you put around him, right? Like, do you put like an all-out star, like a Doncic around him? Do you put I guess you could Trae Young would also qualify like as an all-out star, right?
Yes,
but do you put someone like a Trae Young who maybe isn't the scorer that Luka is, along the same lines as Luka? Do you try to throw the sink at Giannis if there's more rumblings of him being unhappy and hey, I might leave Milwaukee and whatever? Like, what type of guy do you put next to Wemby in the next couple of years as he's growing into what he's going to grow into? And my thought is I tend to lean toward you surround him or you put him around a really good distributor, a smart, preferably a veteran, somebody who's really going to know how to play and specifically how to play with Wemby as much of an enigma as Vic is. Learn how to get him in his spots, where he wants the ball, the best ways in which to get him touches, and all those sorts of things. I think that's what you want to do. The question is, what kinds of guys are out there? Who that has that kind of player is going to be willing to part with that guy, and when they want high picks for that guy, are the Spurs willing to part with those picks with all their with all their assets?
Yeah, it's going to be a high asking price if the Spurs want to bring in a heavy hitter, as you mentioned, like a Trae Young or whatnot. And, you look at the recent rumors as well. What was the big one most recently? DeJounte Murray. Oh, DeJounte Murray, Spurs, a reunion. What's going on here? And I've said it to you. I said it to many other people who have been on Locked On Spurs. Okay, fine. It happened to be DeJounte, but I'm just glad they know the issue. The issue is point guard. It could have been DeJounte, could have been Kyle Lowry, could have been, pick a point guard that could possibly be available. Drew Holiday, fine. At least Spurs, I'm glad you recognize the issue. And I feel bad because I look at Trey Jones and he's an awesome player. He's a really good player, just dynamite, does a bang up job. As a matter of fact, I was surprised to see this in the clutch where the Spurs are behind or tied with 5 minutes left. One of the top 5 clutch players for the Spurs is Trey Jones. So, but he's just that lack of shooting. That's what's killing him right now is that outside shot, and then he's undersized. If I look at, in a dream world, I would love to have a Mike Conley, a Drew Holiday, and also another player like this, but without the off the court baggage, even like a Rajon Rondo, that kind of dog mentality that'll get the play set up and get everything going. But I think that's going to be priority number 1, Hector, whether it be at the trade deadline today, if they do make a move, or in the offseason, is addressing the point guard situation. Your thoughts?
No doubt. And I can't help but think is listening to you too, is what we've learned at following the Spurs and what Spurs fans have really learned is at the end of the day, there's still no such thing as positionless basketball.
Right.
You may have versatile guys who can do a number of different things. You may not need a 7'2" hulking center who just clogs up the middle anymore.
Yeah.
But there's no such thing. It's not positionless basketball. I think we got psyched out, and I say general basketball world collectively got psyched out into thinking guys can do different things. So therefore, get the 5 best guys out there, and they should be able to complement each other because they're also versatile. And what we're seeing is there's still a need for certain skills, especially on certain teams. The Spurs are one of those teams. Maybe you can get away without having a key distributor, a key guy who's going to get you. If you're a team that has 2 of the top 10 guys in the league, or a generational,
basically Denver, basically the Nuggets. If you're the Nuggets, you can get away with that.
Even the Nuggets, like I think Jamal Murray is pretty much a point guard. Like he's a scoring guard, but we've seen a scoring. Isaiah Thomas was a scoring point guard. Jamal Murray's a point guard. He's not John Stockton. That doesn't mean he's not a point guard. And so you look at how much they lose when they don't have him. Jamal Murray's not Kobe Bryant. Like that's not his game. He's not LeBron. That's not his game. Jamal Murray is in the mode of a point guard. It's the modern day point guard, if that's the way you want to phrase it. The game has changed. Saying that positionless basketball isn't quite positionless doesn't mean the game hasn't changed. It's obviously changed. It's just not synonymous with positions and skills don't matter because they can find a way to complement each other. Maybe, but it's not as simple as just throwing them into a pot.
Yeah, you add the fact too that in recent years, I don't know about this upcoming All-Star game this month, but in previous All-Star games, what was it? The ballots when it did away with that? Oh, just pick 5 players, and I think they're coming back to positions now. And look, if it wasn't positionless, then if it is positionless, then why did the Spurs say Wemby, you're a 5?
Right.
If it's really positionless, then it should be Wemby, keep on doing what you're doing.
If you're going to talk about the Spurs specifically. Why did Sohan hate his time at the point guard? If it's really true,
he despised
it. Doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Why do the other players talk about how much of a difference? Not trying to disrespect Jeremy when they're saying this, but they talk about how much of a difference Trey has made.
Trey Jones,
Trey talks about the importance of running the offense. The evidence, especially with this team, is all around.
Is all around. Yeah. So ultimately, we were answering the question: should they make a move? Right now, today, trade deadline. Again, everybody, we're recording this before the buzzer goes off, trade deadline, so maybe something could have happened. But if nothing happened, I don't see any blockbuster move, nothing DeJounte, Derek White levels. I think we're pretty safe to say perhaps we may have seen McDermott, Osman, and Graham's possible last days in San Antonio. If it would be those 3 of the usual suspects right now, right?
Yeah. If it's going to be, if there's a move, I would expect it's going to be Doug for like a second rounder and a throw-in. Somebody on somebody's roster who, gets, 6 points and 4 rebounds a game or something like that.
Yeah.
It's going to be that type of a move. I would be shocked if it's Devin for whatever, a first and a second rounder or whatever Devin would command on it. I don't even, it's hard to even tell with a guy like a Devin and a guy like a Sohan, but yes, the long way of answering your question, Jeff, is it's going to be Doug for one of those, Jetty for one of those, in one of those types of situations, Devontae for like a straight up second rounder, like in 2027 or something, it's going to be one of those types of moves.
I wouldn't even be surprised if nothing happens with like Graham, they tell him in the waiver wire time, okay, well, thank you for your service, and go latch on another team. But yeah, I think it'll be kind of quiet. I mean, I think if also another situation, the Spurs just help facilitate a big move. I can definitely see the Spurs being involved in those situations. Well, we need a third team to come in and make the numbers work. I see the Spurs serving in that capacity, but you also look at the other NBA GMs. They know what the Spurs are sitting on right now. If I'm an NBA GM and I'm looking at San Antonio, and they called me and I called them, whatever. But look, I know you can afford the price. How many first round picks you got? How many flippable players you have right now? Look, this will help your rebuild. You just got Wemby. How much more do y'all want to need? Those basketball guys smiled on you. So, it might be some heavy negotiations with Brian Wright and other teams. But
if there was like a disgruntled star type player, the Spurs would be in prime position to try to pry that guy away. But that we know of, there's not a guy who's asking to get out or who's really or who's not getting along with the coach or who's had it up to here with the organization. Because absent of that, what you're dealing with is realistically, what are we going to get? What can we get for Doug? And is it worth it? What can we get for Osman? And is it worth it? What can we get for Devontae? And is it worth it? Everybody else is either it really becomes the Spurs really have to sit back and think about it based on what the other teams, because again, no one's going to say, we'll give you 2 first rounders for Devin. I don't think anyone's going to say that. I would be shocked.
I would be shocked too.
But because no one's going to say that, the Spurs are really going to sit back and think about if they do get an offer for Devin, at the end of the day, is it worth it? Because yes, Devin might not be, Kobe Bryant right now. Not that anybody else is, but just throwing it out there just to talk about how, with the level of player that fans might want. Devin might not be that, but he's also probably better than anybody you're going to get late in the first round 4 years ago.
Absolutely. He is Hector Ledesma. Follow him on X at Hector Ledesma TV. He's a Spurs writer for Clutch Points. What is going on in your neck of the woods, Hector?
Well, I don't travel to most games with the team, so I'm going to be here in San Antonio while the Spurs are on the rodeo road trip. So I'll be tracking them, seeing what they say afterwards as well. Still be writing on what the team is doing. We got a piece coming up, Jeff. Actually, on I think I'm gonna post it during right when All-Star break hits, maybe like that first day before, like maybe that Thursday or that Friday. Basically on the Spurs, who's like the calm it down, hey everyone, things are gonna be okay guy on the team. Keldon's the rah in your face, is never quiet.
Boy,
guy.
Is he?
Yeah,
he's
that guy.
Oof.
Who's the other guy on the other end of that spectrum? And so I'm working on that piece, and probably will do that right when All-Star break starts.
Hey, thanks for making Locked On Spurs your first listen each and every day, free and available wherever you get podcasts, iTunes, Ken's 5 Plus app. Pick a platform. We are there. Spotify, sure, we're there too. Everywhere you find your favorite podcast, you can find Locked On Spurs. And on YouTube, you can find Locked On Sports Today, 24/7 streaming channel, only on YouTube, Locked On Sports Today. Go subscribe to it right now. Just so many shows are on there. We're in the rotation. Hopefully you click on it and we're there, and you caught that show in the right time. Locked On Sports Today, 24/7 streaming channel. So for Hector the Hulk Ledesma, I am Jeff Garcia. We're going to put a lock on this episode of Locked On Spurs.